They were here before. The San Bushmen knew them and painted them on the rocks. For perhaps 40,000 years, man and elephant lived tolerantly together. Neither threatened the existence of the other. On these rocks, overlooking the seasonal river, today still called Nweti Ndlopfu, the river of the elephants, is the only known rock painting of elephants in the Kruger National Park. A San artist recorded the passing of this herd about 2,000 years ago. But then came the guns. Only when all the elephants were gone did anyone do anything to protect their home. Paul Kruger, president of the Transvaal Republic, asked that hunting should cease on the land between the Sabie and the Sand rivers. It was 1898. Gradually, after the shooting stopped, the elephants reclaimed their Eden. Small breeding groups followed the bulls, often under cover of darkness. The first bulls brought with them the giant ivory, now borne by their descendants in Kruger today. They would open up the new territory and cross new rivers. When the cows were sure it was safe, they would bring their families. The elephants sniffed and tested the new ground, as if they remembered the past. The trackers found them in the wilderness between the Olifants and Letaba rivers. They were the first in many decades to gaze upon these giant newcomers to the lowveld. They counted the herd, moving silently like clouds in the riverbed. Ten elephants had chosen their new home on the Olifants, yet another river named after them. And the elephants had chosen wisely, for they did not know it then, But this was Kruger, and once again it was to be their time. Over the years, more bulls moved in from their refuge in the lowlands of Mozambique, and more of the scattered family groups moved into the young sanctuary. The founding herd in the Olifants Gorge learned slowly the old paths, the old feeding grounds and watering holes of their ancestors. Here, as before, the herds would be able to relax and to play. The future was stirring within this first herd. One of the cows soon gave birth to a young calf, the first to be born within Kruger. This calf was probably sired by one of the giant bulls, still wary sentinels, who first moved into Kruger, preparing the way for the breeding herds. Today's large-tusked bulls, like Mlondoti, would probably have been fathered from this original gene pool. Choosing to feed apart from the other bulls in the Sabier River floodplain, Mlondoti still occasionally associates with the other bulls. The deeply sunken cavities around his temples and the folds of skin draping his body tell that Mlondoti is in his last years. While others enjoy the cooling waters of the Sabier, the old bull moves off. He prefers to drink from a nearby dam. Sunset Dam is one of Mlondoti's favorite haunts, and he will not change his ways now. Others, it seems, also prefer the dam, even though it's within 100 meters of the river. A crocodile exploits the cover of the Nile cabbage to slide closer to prey. While Mlondoti coats himself in a cool layer of mud, an impala has panicked and dived into the water. Today, the young ram gets away with his swim. The dam feeds many, not just crocodiles. Saddle-billed storks find food in abundance. Elephants acquire much of their knowledge through learning, not heredity. In his long life, Mlondolozi will have been taught where to look for the nutrients he needs. This was Mlondolozi's last summer, but his legacy will live into the next century of Kruger's existence through the young he has sired. Mlondolozi's body was found 2 months later, lying where he had fallen, too weak to stand. His tusks were removed by park rangers. The old bull died as he lived, naturally, in the sanctuary of Kruger. In the time of the killing, when hunting parties like that of Prince Alfred of England could kill as many as 1,000 animals in a single day, the game was free for all. No one could imagine that one day it would be shot out. The elephants that survived the slaughter moved north across the Limpopo into Zimbabwe and east into the fever-ridden coastal lowlands of Mozambique. The hunting continued unabated. No species was spared. The last remnants of the elephant families escaped. Then, one day, Eden was empty. The Lowveld, where the Kruger National Park was to be born, held not a single elephant. The first warden of the park, Colonel James Stevenson Hamilton, wrote, "Although in former days no doubt plentiful, in 1902 the only indications of elephants in the present Kruger National Park were a few tracks in the neighborhood of Oliphant's Gorge." There is no evidence that Kruger's Lowveld was ever densely populated with elephants. Present scientific thinking is that the area, although huge, never held vast numbers of them. The various tribes of the area certainly encountered them, though, as they hunted across the wide open spaces of the Lowveld. The Venda used to trap animals, including elephants, in pits, and the other tribes of the area, the Swazi and the Shangaan, at great risk hunted elephant from time to time. The tribes, though, lived in balance with nature, sometimes killing elephants, sometimes being killed by elephants. Neither threatened the existence of the other. Slowly, in those first years on the Oliphants, elephant numbers were growing, with the big bulls and the young bulls expanding the range ever further, ever southward. While the young female calf born in the sanctuary was growing to adulthood, the Boer War was fought, and after that, the First World War. All this time, Kruger remained a place of peace, distant from the anger of man against man. By now, in 1919, there were an estimated 155 elephants in the park, as recorded by Stevenson Hamilton and his staff of rangers and trackers. In good conditions, an elephant population will grow at about 5 to 7% per year. But elephants were still coming into Kruger from other areas, sensing the sanctuary here. At about this time, our young female would be coming of age. A female is ready to bear calves at between 12 and 15 years old. A young bull will meet others like himself, and they will joust and test each other's skill and strength. During this period, they explore their roles in society as they begin to understand their abilities and their limitations. Some of the resultant rankings are too subtle for us to understand, while others are obvious. Big, strong bulls dominate those smaller than themselves. Older bulls have more clearly established roles. They have met most of the other bulls in the area and are aware of their status. No contest is needed to know who has right of way. As the young bulls grow up, the jousts become more serious. They take every chance to improve their status within the group. A powerful physiological change dramatically affects the status of the older bulls. In the condition called moost, the temporal glands above his eyes begin to discharge. Often he will dribble urine, spreading a pungent odor in the air. This change takes place for the first time when the bull is in his late 20s. It's a milestone in his life. Some males in moost become aggressive, attacking and even killing other bulls, while others seem to take the condition in their stride. A bull in moost moves to join nearby breeding herds, looking for females in estrus. He can identify them by tasting their urine, using a special organ in his mouth. He might have competition from other bulls in the same condition. Confronted by a more powerful male, he will have to back down. Each adult bull has his own cycle of moost for about 3 months each year. Females may come into estrus at any time. Being in the right place at the right time can give a young male his first chance to mate, if the female accepts him. Older and more experienced bulls are usually more successful than newly mature males. Here, a young opportunist is trying to mate with a cow who has wandered away from the herd. She does not accept his advances. If there is no more dominant male in the offing, he might try again soon, or he might have to wait until his next period of moost. He has another try, but the matriarch of the herd and the young cow's siblings give voice to their support for her rejection of the upstart, and the young bull will have to wait for another chance. The solidarity of females in their mother's herd is something to be reckoned with. The males wander from herd to herd while they're in roost, looking for a receptive female wherever they can find one. "22 months after mating, the calf is born, weighing about 100 kilos. Within minutes, it's on its feet and able to move along with the herd. Its mother can recognize its surprisingly loud call from some distance away. Thus, the second generation of elephants was born in Kruger. Females born in this generation, mated with the great bulls from Mozambique, would become the mothers of the park's present generation of mighty tuskers, born in about 1939, on the eve of the Second World War. In the first few days and weeks of its life, the young calf is at its most vulnerable to predators. Its mother keeps it between her forelegs or under her body for much of the time, especially at night. It will also be well protected by sisters and aunts who share the work of bringing it up. The breeding herd is a family unit of related females who stay together most of the time, rearing their young in a cooperative group. Young males become sexually mature at about 14, when they leave their family to lead the life of an independent bull, though they begin to feel the stirrings of independence before that. Even at 8 or 9 years old, they may well spend a night or two away from the family from time to time. At this age, they are still vulnerable to predators and to aggressive senior bulls. This adolescent male has wandered away from his family, and as evening draws near, he searches for them anxiously. They have moved away from where he left them, and he doesn't want to spend the night alone. He calls and sniffs the air, but to no avail. Other young males and family groups enjoy the cool water or share dust baths nearby, but he is alone and afraid. Although there are other elephants about, they are not his family. If he approaches them, he will be rejected. He sniffs a passing female, but she's a stranger. In their teens, young bulls grow very quickly. By about 20 years old, they will be taller than the biggest female. Bulls grow to 3.5 meters tall, and females to about 2.5. At sunset, the last families move into thicker bush for the night. The giant territorial bulls have no need for such refuge, fearing little, except man. in the dying light of day, the owners of the night proclaim their territory. While his family feeds on the remains of a zebra nearby, a pride leader announces his presence to all other lions within earshot. In lion society, the females are the hunters and providers. The role of the pride male is to proclaim and defend their hunting territory. For this, he receives the lion's share of the food and the prospect of a short, stressful life in the defense of his family. Morning reveals the fate of the lonely young bull. Even in Kruger, some elephants are killed by poachers, but he still has his tusks, so something else ended his short life. Marks on his body show that he fell foul of an aggressive older bull. The vultures set about their work. Newcomers drop from the sky, attracted by the sight of their fellows feeding at such a large carcass. They are mainly white-backed vultures, but larger lappet-faced and smaller white-headed vultures soon join the feast. Later in the morning, the lions arrive. They are primarily hunters, but they're not above scavenging to fill their bellies when the chance arises. The vultures wait nearby. Their turn will come again. Lions will hunt and kill young elephants if they find them away from the protection of the family, just as readily as they demolish this unexpected feast. The carcass of the young elephant is so big that it lasts them through the day and into the evening. In the dry weather of winter, lions will often stake out a waterhole away from the river and wait for their prey to come to them. Fear fills the air, but the need for water is paramount. The lioness has only to wait for her chance. She failed this time, but she knows they will be back. The zebra and the wildebeest can smell the lioness, and they're regularly attacked here, but they must drink. Many bear the scars of recent narrow escapes. Now the wind has changed, carrying the scent of the lioness away from her prey. The drinkers are lulled momentarily into a false sense of security. The other zebra run for their lives, while the wildebeest watch impassively. Only the jackals move closer. There will be leftovers after this meal. The pride male has also been watching. As the zebra's struggles grow weaker, he moves in to collect his dues. The lioness knows her place. She is hungry, but she has no right to the prey that she has just caught. The male finishes it off with a single bite from his powerful jaws. The zebra weighs 400 kilos. The big male lion carries it effortlessly off into the shade a few hundred meters away. For the time being, the lionesses must wait, along with the jackals, until the male has eaten. Patience is the price they pay for having a male to defend them and to sire their cubs. Life in the elephant herds of Kruger moved on with the century. The slow, purposeful progress of the herds gradually reclaimed the park as their own. By the mid-1930s, they had populated the northern half of the park's 2 million hectares. There's less water here, but more security in the remote, dry country. The young bulls had an important part to play in this expansion of elephant territory. Too old to stay with the herd, but too young to compete with older bulls, they would have been forced to wander into new, unexplored country. They expanded the boundaries of the known range, establishing places where it would soon be safe for new herds to follow. In this time of expansion, the giant tuskers that dominate the park today would have been among the young pioneers finding their feet in a new world. By 1947, there were 550 elephants in Kruger, and they were still expanding, filling the park from the north. And so the elephants came home, under the watchful eyes of the wardens and rangers of the new national park. Their progress was recorded in detail as the park filled up. As they spread, the herds met and made friends. Young and adults played together in their newfound security. The park offered clinging mud to cool them down and smother their parasites, and sturdy trees against which to scrape it off again. Mud has other virtues too that make it worth considerable effort to dig up from the baked ground. The clay contains minerals to supplement the elephant's diet. As the elephants filled the park, they inevitably began to have an effect on their environment. So many huge appetites placed a strain on the resources. Even today, no one knows for sure how many elephants the park can support. With their ability to tear down trees and their amazing dexterity in pulling up even tiny roots, they subject the vegetation to immense pressure. It became clear that something would have to be done to control their numbers. In the 1960s, there were nearly 9,000 elephants in Kruger National Park. The sanctuary had become too safe. It was time for the killing to begin again. In 1967, the population was culled for the first time. Whole families were killed together so that there were no survivors to spread their fear and distress to other herds in the park. A family group would be selected from the air and driven by helicopter into an open space. There, each elephant was darted with a lethal overdose, any survivors being finished off by rangers on the ground. Since then, nearly 14,000 elephants have been culled. Many of the lone tuskers survived. In 1996, international pressure stopped the killing once more, though the darting continued. From now on, the darted elephants would be moved to places where they were needed to stock newly protected habitat. The phenomenal success of Kruger's elephants could now be shared with other parts of Africa, returning the species to places where it had been wiped out in the days of hunting. It's now possible to relocate fully grown bulls. These wise and experienced animals help the younger elephants to settle into their new homes. 2 bulls have been darted to be moved to Hluhluwe Umfolozi Game Reserve in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. The team needs to work fast with the groggy animals because their weight can make it difficult for them to breathe when they're lying down. The aim is to roll the elephant over so that it can be moved on a mat. One man holds the trunk open in case it should collapse. While the beast is down, there's a chance to gather information that would be hard to come by while he was on his feet and conscious. Individual markings like damage to an ear and his unique footprint can be recorded for future identification. Each elephant leaves Kruger with a full dossier and a clean bill of health. The tip of his trunk wedged open with a stick, he dozes as he awaits the next move. The container truck waits as the men prepare to maneuver 5 tons of elephant into position. It's not a task to be undertaken lightly. Once he's on the mat, he can be winched up onto the truck. The wardens keep a careful check on his breathing throughout the operation. Then he's given the antidote to the sedative just before being shut up inside the truck. The antidote works quickly. They get the door shut only just in time. After a cooling bucket of water, The bull comes to with a jolt. The two bulls will go directly to the new reserve, an 8-hour drive, where they're to be released to form the core of a new herd. From having no elephants a century ago, Kruger has become the nursery from which empty ranges elsewhere can be restocked. This is progress indeed. Chief Chokwane was the original chief of this area, and one of the largest tuskers in Kruger is named after him. Chokwane the elephant is nearing the end of his days. His sunken cheeks are the badge of 60 years of life in Kruger. One massive tusk was broken in a fight long ago. He will have sired many future tuskers to carry the tradition of the park on into the next century. His near contemporary, Duke, is the other large bull of this area. He still has both tusks intact. Both Duke and Chokwane were born before the Second World War. The world has changed a lot since they were babies. But little has changed in Kruger. Here the same cycles continue year in and year out, from dry, dusty winter to the welcome rains of summer. It rained the day Chokwane died. While younger bulls reveled in the cool freshness, the old tusker moved quietly away from the water and into the bush. It rained all night and into the early morning. By the time the rangers found his body, it was midday and the ground was dry. There's sadness in any death, but time passes and the future beckons. Younger bulls are waiting to take up the torch, to continue Chokwane's line. Out on the Olifants floodplain, a group of young bulls have found a rainbow.